Man United, 4-0. It was essentially a game of two halves. The first half, completely different to the second.
Yeah, as we'd said on the pod before, definitely was expecting it to be a closer game. I think I'd been saying this as well. It was going to come down to who could handle the pressure and who could handle the experience or lack of experience, right? And I think from the get-go, Manchester United looked comfortable with that pressure, with that experience. They didn't look phased by the occasion, which I think was probably a huge part of how they performed on the day. I also think beating Chelsea in the lead up to this game massively helped with that. Of course, their experience at Wembley did as well, but they're going in there knowing we've already knocked out the winners from last year. Like, essentially, we can do anything kind of thing, right? We know how to deal with Wembley. We know what it's going to be like with the fans and the crowd. So I think that massively helped. But I expected it to be a closer game, and it was for a half. Like, I think there were moments of naivety in the game, that Tottenham's naivety, that you can kind of pinpoint little moments where you're like, they're the little things that you need to work on as a team. You know, there was some of their decision making. There was a moment right before halftime, in injury time, Spurs are up the pitch, and I feel like they went for it when they could have just seen out the half, right? So Drew Spence went for a ball. I think she missed it or lost possession. Suddenly there was a load of space in midfield. Sumanin is there trying to take on her player and trying to cover the space that's been left by Drew Spence. Suddenly Ella Toon's taken off down the pitch and scores an absolute friggin' worldie. And suddenly United's halftime talk is a completely different talk, right? If they'd gone in at halftime, I still think Man United would have won, but I don't think it maybe would have been quite the drubbing. Whereas I think scoring when they did, it just kind of felt like it switched the game up a little bit, because they had been the more dominant team in the game, but I felt like Spurs were kind of managing, they'd settled, you know, they'd managed those early waves of attack from your Galtons, your Rachel Williams. So when they scored, and they did, I feel like that came a little bit from some naive decision makings. We saw it as well with stuff like the subs that came on before the second goal, like substituting right before an opposition team's set piece. Just felt like a disruption, you know, little things like that where you can just kind of identify little naive maybe moments where Manchester United have experienced all that before and know when to make the right decisions in the right moments, right?
I felt kind of disappointed for Spurs, because I think it was a very evenly balanced game. I think, like you said, Spurs were managing the pressure incredibly well, and it was at points end to end, but Spurs didn't seem to be delivering the sort of final product as effectively as Manchester United were, and they missed a couple of sitters. So that was when I was thinking, okay, maybe the game isn't going to go their way, and Spurs are going to get a cheeky win out of this with like one progression upfield, and then all of a sudden it's just that one chance that happens to nail this FA Cup final for them. But I've got to give a shout out to that Ella Toon goal, because it was almost written in the stars. Like Alessia Russo had said before the game that, you know, she's expecting like Tooney to score an absolute worldie, as she did in the World Cup, in the Euros. And then obviously, like, there was a lovely tweet from her after the game that sort of there was a message from her dad that said to Ella, if you keep progressing, you know, go up, take your chances, and you'll get that goal. And she tweeted it after the game, and it was like, if your dad and Alessia Russo have said you're going to score a worldie at Wembley, where you absolutely love doing that, you're going to.
There's the angle of that shot from behind.
No chance for Becky Spencer.
No, but it's unreal. Like, you just
curve.
you see her take it. You see like all the fans behind, and you just see the kind of flight of the ball just curve away from. It's like the absolute wonder goal that you want to score at Wembley.
God, isn't it just?
Other than maybe that cheeky lob that she did during the Euros final, but.
Yeah,
that one was pretty good.
Well, Mark Skinner decided to start veteran Rachel Williams, leaving summer signings Melvin Mallard and Jay-Z on the bench. Nikita Paris, the club's top scorer in all competitions this season, was not in the starting 11 either. I mean, what were your thoughts on Mark Skinner's squad selection? Because there was a lot of controversy when the news first dropped on Twitter. A lot of people saying, you know, we understand that Rachel Williams has come up in a few big moments for Manchester United, but we were expecting Paris. She's obviously been putting goals away, and we were expected a different front line, essentially. I mean, what were your thoughts? Do you think that was the right call?
Yeah, actually I do.
Okay.
I thought he would start Rachel Williams. I thought United would want to get an early goal. I think that would have been really important for them to do that. I mean, they didn't ultimately get an early goal, but she was the one who came closest. She had probably 3 chances in the first half to score. And that's no disrespect to Keats. I mean, given the rumours that, you know, an Enda Brissell club would come in for her and she turned it down because she wanted to be in the FA Cup final, you would probably feel a little bit snubbed. But it made sense to me to start Rachel Williams, to kind of bully that Spurs defence, to, you know, make them question themselves a little bit in those big moments where they'd attack early, which they did do. and she causes problems, and it made sense to me, and actually it paid off, and I'm really glad she got a goal because she deserved a goal on the day. She's been in FA Cup finals before. I know Keats has the experience too, but the Rachel Williams thing made sense to me. I think he wanted to start quickly and wanted to get an early goal.
I think when you look at the performance that she had, it kind of validated his decision,
100%.
essentially. I mean, she's 36. I mean, like, she's one of those players that we've always seen sort of maybe last season, especially like the first half of this season, as being that kind of impact sub. And then she's kind of smashed her way essentially into the starting 11 on a couple of occasions and has proven herself. I mean, she is dynamic. She's annoying to play against. Like, you know that she's got that experience. I mean, like you said, won the FA Cup with Birmingham City 12 years ago, mind, but still, like, the experience that she's gathered in the WSL.
She's physical in the box, right?
It's that. She's a bit kind of Myra Ramirez in a way. She's got that presence. She's got that physicality.
In set pieces, I can't imagine having to mark her.
She doesn't, I don't think she cares about being hurt either to score a goal. And I think sometimes you need that kind of the brutality and the fearlessness. But yeah, I mean, like you said, came close to scoring twice in the first half before finally putting a one away shortly after half time when she headed in that beautiful Zellum free kick, making it her 5th goal in this season's FA Cup. So to be fair, valid.
I was probably a little bit more surprised that Jade Riviere got a start, you know, given she'd come back from injury.
For sure.
What a game to be like, cool, you're back from injury, off you pop into the FA Cup
Just a small
final.
one.
And do you know what? Like, she did well, to be fair, but that was probably the surprise for me.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than, and then you look at like Spurs front line, Robert was just like, all of the attackers, everyone get on.
An Arsenal.
Yeah, unfortunately it didn't work. I think that was the biggest disappointment for me, was not that Spurs lost, it's that they didn't have a shot on target. Like, they are such a creative team. It's something we've spoken about numerous times on the podcast. I remember the first game of the season against Chelsea, they had something like 11 or 14 shots on target or something ridiculous like that. They were regularly getting up into double figures with shots on target. They dipped off, we spoke about that, after the 7-0 defeat to Manchester City, where they were kind of like, maybe we should have a little look at defending. And they became a little bit more compact and reduced the number of shots on target. But they'd been coming back up again, and they'd been going back into almost double figures when it came to creating shots. So the lack of creativity, I think, was a disappointment, because, as you said in the first half, they were getting up the pitch. Jess Naz was causing problems. The fact that they couldn't create any clear cut, and look, a lot of that's going to be down to Manchester United as well, but I am disappointed that they couldn't even trouble Mary Earps that much.
Well, one of the big disappointments, obviously, of this game was that Tottenham midfielder Grace Clinton, who's played a massive part, a kind of starring role for the club this season. And there was a lovely interview from Roz in the kind of lead up to the game, where she was sort of asked about, you know, Grace Clinton not being able to start and like what her future looked like with the club. And Roz was saying, to be honest, I didn't even know who Grace Clinton was until she started this season. And now she's the absolute star of the show. Like, everybody's talking about her and what she's going to be doing. But unfortunately, obviously, for this game, because of the rules, she was ineligible to play against Man United, obviously her parent club. I mean, how much do you think this was a blow for Tottenham? It's kind of for me, it feels like a mixed bag. It was obviously a blow not to have that player, but also I think Spurs had a squad that was good enough to beat United without her.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think she would have massively changed the outcome, right? I think, yes, it would have been a blow not to have her, but the manner in which they lost and the fact that it was 4-0, I don't think you can put that all on missing one player. Like you say, there's enough experience in that squad to have been able to trouble Manchester United. Also, it would have been her first FA Cup final. So you don't know how she would have managed on the big stage either. So I think that's a lot to put on one player's shoulders to save the day.
So I've never seen her look nervous.
No, I know. Like, in that England, that first game she had for England, she was unreal. But yeah, I just think it's a lot to put on one player's shoulders. I think she would have made a difference, but I'm not sure necessarily changing the outcome of the game.
And I think you've also got to give a little bit of a kind of like personal reflection on how she must have felt going into that game. Like, to be
half and half scarf, yeah. She did have the suit.
I mean, but I felt really sorry for her on a personal level, because she's a young player. A moment like that, to step out in front of a record-breaking crowd at Wembley, you know, for either one of those clubs would have been absolutely huge and historic for her. And I'm just hoping that, okay, that's not going to be the last opportunity that she gets at Wembley. I absolutely don't see that. I mean, she's had an incredible season. She's been nominated for the WSL Player of the Season. She's got 4 goals and 3 assists for Tottenham this year, with all of those coming in wins or draws. Obviously, a lot of speculation happening about whether she's going to be staying at Spurs, whether she's going to be going back to her parent club. A lot of questions were asked about why the hell Man United made that loan in the first place. But what do we think?
Well, this reporting that Spurs intend to make a bid, I mean, and water is wet. Like, of course they're going to make a bid. I think as well, Robert Villaham has spoken a lot about how he wants to be the club that's helping to create the next generation of Lionesses.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he believes in investing in young players and giving them minutes and all that kind of stuff. And it'll be a tough decision for her. Of course, Manchester United are a huge club, and they've won the FA Cup. And you can understand that draw. But at Spurs, she's getting minutes. At Spurs, she's, you could build a team around her. So it's a difficult one for her.
I think she will stay. I think she's done enough at Spurs to warrant a starting 11 space at Man United.
And do you trust that Skinner would start her?
The criticism that Skinner would face for not starting her would be unparalleled. Absolutely unparalleled. But in her place, obviously, was Marta Thomas, the heroine of Tottenham's semi-final win over Leicester City. She got the nod to start up front alongside Bethany England. I don't actually think she was as effective as I've seen her in previous games. I mean, Rachel, what was your thoughts?
No, and that's what I mean. It was just a bit frustrating. It didn't maybe go the way they had planned when we saw them all starting. And Vinberg started as well. Bizet came in kind of the 55th minute or so.
Another surprise non-starter.
Yeah, and whether that was down to fitness, I don't know. But for me, she's been superb this season. And I think perhaps had she been fit enough, could have been a difference maker in terms of turning some of those opportunities further up the field into actual chances. But look, it's a lot of pressure on teams. You suddenly go from maybe being on the fringes of the Man United squad to suddenly being, the expectation that you and Beth England are going to go and win this game for us.
History.
Yeah. So, yeah, they will be a little bit frustrated. But at the same time, like, Tottenham are on a journey. The fact that they've gotten here in such a short space of time, there's a lot of long-term thinking in that squad, I think. And Robert Villahammer has spoken about that. He almost went into this game, I wouldn't say expecting to lose, but had kind of managed those questions as though, look, if we lose, it's,
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know whether that's the right frame of mind or not, but it's also maybe taking the pressure off the players. But, it was always going to be taken well by Tottenham because getting to where they've gotten is huge, a really big step on their journey. And I think he's really, hard for him because it's another cup final he's lost, but he's really invested in this squad. And I think hopefully won't be the last time we see them on the cusp of silverware.
I think that's his kind of presence, though, isn't it? Calm, confidence. I mean, we saw him on stage recently for the Adobe FA Cup event, and this was an incredible event down in Hackney. There were drag queens coming out. It was kind of like there was voguing happening. Everyone was wearing these like beautiful, like really flamboyant, sort of like, it was like a great energy. And then Robert was just on stage being like, and it's going to be a good day, and I'm going to wear my white shoes.
But it shows they understand the importance of these media events.
Calm.
No, but these media events and reaching out to the fans and like getting involved in all of these moments ahead of a big cup final and recognizing that it's a big moment for the club. And I think, seeing him at that event was huge. Like, was huge to get the manager of one of the teams at this event. Like, it's hard enough getting sometimes certain clubs, you know who I'm talking about, getting them involved in media days. Like, it just shows another level to him where he understands the wider impact of Spurs getting to a final, and he recognised the importance of these moments and these media moments, and he got to speak to like really big fans of the club and hear how important it is for them that they're in this final. I just think it's really nice because it further ingrains in him how important it is for this club to be progressing and to be getting into finals.
Well, talking of Robert's leadership, one of the things that I did really admire from him in the sort of post-match press conferences, kind of dissect what had happened. Obviously, one of the big talking points was around Spurs goalkeeper. Becky Spencer making quite an obvious error that gave player of the match, Lucia Garcia, an easy finish to put 3 on the board for United.
And that was a turning point, wasn't it?
It was a pivotal moment in the game. I think, like we kind of said before the pod, that, if you're 2-0 down, that kind of feels like a challenge, but a doable challenge. 3-0 kind of changes the mental side of things because then you've got to get 4 goals to win,
especially the game. The manner in which it was conceded. And like we touched on the fact that Spurs are pretty resilient. They've come back something like 9 times from losing positions to go on to win games across all competitions. They'd come back from 2-0 down against Everton the previous week.
Mm-hmm.
The manner in which and how quick that second and third goal were to each other, and the manner in which they conceded it just felt like an absolute sucker punch, and suddenly you were like, game's gone.
Absolutely. And I think I have got to say that I felt super sorry for Becky. I think up until that point, she'd had a really good game. Obviously, their style of play is very much trying to, play out from the back. And it was something that they've been working on since we entered the WSL. I mean, you go from Championship where it's like, clear it, get the ball away, to actually, if we want to actually build play and create those chances, you need to embed that. And sometimes that comes with, these kind of obvious errors. And you can see what she was trying to do. She was trying to chip it over the head of Lucia Garcia to a defender. But it's obviously just one of those things that on any other day, she would make that pass in an instant. But
as a goalkeeper, we've had a really good question from Anat Shabi on Instagram who said, gutted for Becky, how should clubs be supporting mental recovery? Now, obviously it's going to be a shitter for a goalkeeper to do that.
Absolutely.
On the stage. She did it in front of so many people in a final. The fact that they were, you know, if it had been 1-1 in the 80-something minute, something like that happened, right? Absolutely.
Oh, you'd kick yourself.
Yeah, but in that moment, she's an experienced goalkeeper. How is she going to be managing that situation? And also, you know, we saw from Robert how the club's kind of already putting an arm around her from the final whistle.
Absolutely. I think there's so much more wraparound support now for goalkeepers. I mean, you work so closely with your goalkeeper union. So she would have spoken to her goalkeeper coach after the game and sort of like, you know, she would have been really upset. I mean, even for her as an experienced goalkeeper, we've all had moments like that where you just want the ground to eat you up and you're thinking, I'd never want to play again. I don't even understand how how that has happened. And I think afterwards, like, she'll obviously have to go back and reflect on it. It'll be one of those things maybe you work on in training, doing that clip, making that pass. And it's also something that your goalkeeper coach will be telling you to do again and again in WSL games, in other high pressurized situations, so that you can kind of rewrite the neural pathways that are telling you that, oh, you shouldn't do that. That's a danger pass. That's a risk pass. Because you need to be making those passes if you want to continue to establish this ethos that Spurs are playing out from the back. But you can almost see, like, the minute that had happened and the minute that goal went in, Beth England, a few of the other players, like, went over to Becky and kind of gave her a hug, you know, gave her a high five, and you could see that they were already in that moment saying, mate, don't worry about it. Like, and you can't blame the goalkeeper. I mean, Spurs could have had better chances. They could have converted more of their chances.
They conceded 4.
It's that they could have done better. That one goal isn't going to have made an impact on how that game went out. Absolutely not. So,
really interesting what you're saying though about doing it again, like doing the thing that you now are afraid of doing, but doing it again. I think something Gareth Taylor touched on when we spoke to him in March, I think it was, and we spoke about Kiara Keating and that mistake she made against Arsenal, and he was kind of saying, you know, we'd seen something similar a couple of weeks later where she did something similar again and almost kind of lost the ball, and he was like, we want her to keep doing it because then it becomes a habit and something you're used to doing, and as you say, rewrites that negative experience and makes you less afraid of it, right? Absolutely.
Yeah, and I have, like, honestly, my heart goes out to Becky because I know how it feels in those moments, and you know, I've never had the experience of doing it in front of 78,000 people at Wembley, but yeah, that was the one goal obviously that I was like, I can't clap for it, I can't support it, I can't. Yeah, but mate, you're an amazing keeper and you just go again. It's one of those things. We've got a question in from Sue. She said, does the cup win make up for United's worst WSL season ever and points against the now new top 4?
I just feel like, and yes, we've been critical of Manchester United's form this season, but I just think it's a bit OTT to frame it that way, like that kind of worst WSL season ever. Yes, it's been poor. Yes, we expect more from them, but the squad is good enough to be finishing higher, but they've not been around that long. So framing it that way is just, you know, it's a journey. And I keep saying this about teams, and, you know, the expectation to be consistently in that top 4 all the time is going to get harder and harder and harder. And yeah, we've seen Arsenal do it, Chelsea do it, Man City do it, but United being the latest to break into that top 4 at a time when all of their teams are starting to invest and improve.
I look at Liverpool.
It's a really hard time now to be that consistent top 4, right? So, you know, I still think they should have done better this season, of course, but I do think winning an FA Cup does absolutely put a shine on the season. You know, it's massive to win your first piece of silverware, and for it to be like such a prestigious competition, the FA Cup in front, you know, at Wembley. It's the dream game that so many players want to play. It's an attractive thing for new players, and I think given what the club is going through off the field at the moment, there's a lot of change going on in the club at the moment. Absolutely. I think they're going to want stability. They're going to want consistency, and Skinner is now a trophy winning coach. So, you know, that's a pretty good bargaining chip to bring to the table when you're negotiating a new contract.
Well, I think it's that when you look at kind of the progress that they've made in under 5 years, again, they came up to the WSL at the same time as Spurs, and Spurs are yet to kind of make the accolades that Manchester United have in terms of getting a top 2 WSL finish, in terms of getting Champions League qualification, in terms of winning an FA Cup final. I mean, those are absolutely massive things that have happened within the space of 5 years of coming up into the WSL. So I think, yes, it's not been a great season, but I'm kind of expecting that it's a bit of a Villa season for them, and that next year, hopefully, they'll bounce back a bit.
Yeah, and I think the criticism is generally around tactics, player choice, stuff like that. You know, they've still, at the end of the day, won the bloody FA Cup.
So how much do you think this has strengthened Mark Skinner's bargaining power for a new contract?
Massive. I mean, your bargaining chip is an FA Cup trophy. You know, I can understand the criticism because Mark Skinner himself is the person who says we're the biggest, you know, one of the biggest clubs in the world. These are the standards we set for ourselves. We want to be winning things. We deserve to be in the Champions League because we're such a big club and, you know, we should be winning trophies. If you're saying stuff like that, you are going to get criticism when you're underperforming. That comes with the job. And look, you know, we can be correct about it and strategic about it and not be rude about it. I think there is definitely a line between, you know, criticism and just plain being rude and nasty, and we don't need that. But you are going to get criticised in the media if you're setting these standards for yourself and not achieving them. So, you know, it's not personal, but I think going into that discussion now, whether or not this contract has already been offered or not, I think now having a piece of silverware to bring with you is a massive bargaining chip.
Well, it also helps other contract negotiations. I mean, we've got Earps, Zellum, Garcia and Paris all with their contracts expiring at the end of the season. Do we think the kind of FA Cup victory will have kind of helped set out the stall, I suppose, for staying with United, do you reckon?
It's kind of hard to say the same for every single player that you've listed there. Like, I mean, I think Zellum will stay, you know, probably.
She's like United through and through.
100%.
Yeah.
You know, the others maybe, I don't know, up in the air. You know, it's not, winning the FA Cup, obviously massive. They've now got that medal around their neck, but it's not like Champions League where now you've won this, you know you've got X next season, right? You're still not in the Champions League next season. That's going to be a
figure
frustration.
out what's going to happen with Earps. Like there was obviously the rumours that she was going to go to Arsenal. That's absolutely died a death. There were rumours that she might be going abroad. I've seen nothing else pop up. So I don't know now where her heart.
It's like the rumour mill
is.
has gone in hiatus or something. It's like all quiet and down, or it's turned to somebody else. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely that. So I can't kind of figure out. And then you've got Paris, who turned down a huge move with the NWSL last month, despite the Red Devils agreeing a record sale. And then you've obviously got, like you said, sort of like Ineos and, you know, Sir Jim Ratcliffe and kind of like what his kind of take on the whole situation is. And I think it was quite kind of, it's quite telling really that he wasn't at the FA Cup final. He was instead at Old Trafford ahead of the men's team's game with Arsenal. But Skinner sort of insisted that maybe, you know, they're very supportive, but from afar.
Sure.
Potentially.